You were told that life is fair, that if you work hard, stay humble, and wait your turn, the world will notice. That if you're kind, others will be kind in return. That if you stay true to yourself, success will find you. But here's the truth. The world doesn't reward virtue. It rewards perception. And more often, it rewards control. You've been playing a game you didn't even know existed. A game of silent wars where the most dangerous weapon isn't strength, but anticipation. Not emotion, but timing. Not truth, but illusion. Look around. The people in charge, the ones who rise fast, speak little, and own the room, they aren't the loudest, the most honest, or the most skilled. They are the most strategic. They know how to weaponize silence, how to withhold the right compliment, how to reveal just enough weakness to appear human and just enough cruelty to remain feared. You were taught to react. They were trained to wait. This is the first lie that broke your edge. You believed that good intentions are enough. So you spoke from your heart. You revealed your plans. You chased approval like a currency. And when you failed, you blamed yourself, not realizing that your failure wasn't personal. It was structural. Because in the eyes of Machiavelli, naivete is the highest form of weakness. Not stupidity, but emotional transparency. Not ignorance, but the belief that honesty and effort will secure loyalty and influence. He writes, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. Not what you do, but what they think you're capable of." That's why the weakest men overexplain themselves. They talk too much, reveal too much, ask too many questions. They mistake access for connection, visibility for value. You become predictable. And predictable men are easy to provoke, easy to beat, and easy to control. The people who succeed in silence, they already know what you're going to say, because they've studied you, watched your rhythm, noticed your words, cataloged your habits. They didn't interrupt you. They didn't even argue. They just waited for your moment of emotional exposure, and they used it. That's how psychological war is won before it begins. Let's break this. Imagine a corporate meeting, a dozen men in suits, some loud, some quiet. One man sits in silence the entire time, arms still, face unreadable. He says nothing, but his silence burns louder than words, because people start imagining what he's thinking. They assign meaning, power, depth, fear. And when he finally speaks 10 seconds, no more, the entire room quiets. Not because of respect, but because of uncertainty. That's control. That's design. That's psychological warfare. Now compare him to the man beside him, explaining his ideas nervously, speaking with urgency, trying to prove he belongs. One controls attention, the other bleeds it. You were probably raised to be the second one, to show your value, to express your emotions, to earn your seat. But Machiavelli would say this: it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Because fear doesn't require your presence. It lingers. Fear creates space. It buys you silence, leverage, and time. And the man who has time has the upper hand. You lost power the moment you rushed to prove something. Your enemy. He doesn't rush. He observes. He doesn't get angry. He gets notes. He doesn't interrupt. He waits for your contradiction. This is the second lie you believe, that truth must be spoken. That if you don't say it now, it will disappear. That if you don't explain yourself, people will misunderstand you. Let them. Machiavelli's strategy is simple. Perception is more useful than truth, because truth changes nothing without leverage. But perception, it builds it. You don't win by having better ideas. You win by planting the illusion that you've already won, that you know something they don't, that your silence is intentional, not insecure, that your stillness is planned, not passive. So what's the move? You need to erase the idea that winning comes from confrontation, that it's emotional, or expressive, or dramatic. No, winning is psychological. It happens before the battle begins, and it begins with your presence. Right now, people around you can read you like a map. They know when you're nervous. They can tell when you want approval. They sense the shift in your voice, the pause in your eyes, the subtle tension in your breath. You're not in control, you're being read. Your opponent may never say it, but he already knows how to beat you. Not with power, not with skill, with anticipation. He knows what you'll do next, but he doesn't know what to do with a man who gives nothing away. Let that be you. No reactions, no unnecessary explanations, no emotional expressions that cost more than they give. You become unreadable, and the unreadable man is feared. You don't need to yell to make a statement. You don't need to smile to be liked. You don't need to react to every insult, every test, every emotional trap. You only need to be two things present and unreadable. Because the man who cannot be predicted cannot be defeated. This is how you begin. You abandon the need to be understood. You erase the impulse to prove yourself. You study their rhythm and break yours. In a world of overexposed emotion, your silence becomes a weapon. In a world of short attention spans, your stillness becomes a mystery. In a world of desperate approval, your distance becomes power. Now they ask, who is he? What is he thinking? Why doesn't he speak? They lean closer. They adjust their tone. They shift their words for you. And that is how you control the room before the battle ever begins. Before they even know, they've already lost. You think manipulation is active, that it's a speech, a scheme, or a trap. But the most powerful manipulations don't come from force, they come from absence. The less you do, the more people invent reasons for your presence. The less you say, the more they try to impress you. The less emotion you reveal, the more influence you gain. This is passive control, the Machiavellian art of making others move while you remain still. You've been taught the opposite. You were trained to solve problems fast, speak up in conflict, show initiative. But in real-world power dynamics, speed is weakness, clarity is exposure, and movement, it gives away position. So you become still, not passive-controlled. Because when you say less, people fill in the blanks with their own fears, hopes, and projections. And that's how you trap them, not with lies with their own imagination. Let's talk about presence. You walk into a room, you don't need to say a word. You make deliberate eye contact, not too long, not too short. You speak last, not first. You move slow, as if nothing is urgent for you. You don't fidget. You listen, but not with enthusiasm. You observe like a predator. This is not performance. It's design. Because every room is a test, not of charm, but of control. Most people enter a room like they owe the world something. They smile fast, sit down quick, nod too often. They lean forward, they try to agree. You don't. You remain still like you already own the room. Now let's go deeper. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." So you don't let them experience you. You let them imagine. Here's how it works. Let's say you're in a negotiation, business, salary, contract. The average man prepares arguments. He comes in with bullet points, statistics, and reasons why he deserves more. You make the other side speak first. You say less. You raise an eyebrow, not your voice. You hold eye contact long after their sentence ends. You let silence suffocate them. Eventually, they lower their offer, or raise their own, not because you convinced them, but because your stillness made them uncertain. And uncertainty is the enemy of power unless you're the one creating it. You see, most people are addicted to reaction. You ask a question, they answer too fast. You challenge them, they explain. You insult them, they defend. But Machiavelli would ask, what if you didn't react? What if someone questions your competence and you stare at them without answering? What if someone insults you and you look at them, blink slowly, and walk away? What if someone expects praise and you give them nothing? You flip the dynamic. Now they are the ones waiting for your approval. They are the ones scrambling to fill the silence. This is how the strong move. They don't raise their tone. They raise doubt. They don't fight for dominance. They subtract certainty. This isn't charisma. This is warfare. And every social interaction is a field of war. Either you are setting the rhythm, or you're dancing to someone else's. Let's look at body language. A man who's desperate to be seen, you can smell him from a mile away. He touches his face. He laughs too loud. His feet are restless. His hands speak before his mouth does. This man can never lead. He can never dominate. He is ruled by impulse. Now watch the opposite. A man with cold control. His hands move only when necessary. His eyes don't dart. His head doesn't tilt to seek agreement. He pauses before he speaks. He responds with slowness. He leaves space after his sentences, forcing you to sit in the tension. This man is unreadable. And unreadable men can't be attacked because no one knows where to strike. This is passive dominance. You don't take attention, you command it. You don't show intelligence, you let them assume it. You don't chase power, you make them hand it to you. Here's what most men don't understand. Dominance is not noise, it's absence. When a wolf walks into a room, it doesn't bark, it doesn't growl. It watches, and the pack senses it not through sound, but stillness. That's how you become the wolf. Not by yelling your value, but by withholding your need to prove it. You speak only when necessary. You never show eagerness. You master the power of delay. When someone asks your opinion, wait. When someone insults you, delay your reaction. When someone offers praise, pause. Don't immediately accept. This builds mystery, and mystery is leverage. They can't read you, so they can't predict you, so they can't control you. Now here's the hard part. This strategy isn't about faking confidence. It's about building an internal code, a cold discipline. You don't chase. You don't explain. You don't fill silence, because you understand the mechanics of power. You've studied Machiavelli. You've seen what makes leaders fall. You've watched empires collapse not from weakness, but from exposure. So you do the opposite. You become less available. You give less emotional feedback. You move less. You speak less. You react less. And in doing so, you control more. Not because you're powerful, but because you're unreadable. And in a world of emotional men, the unreadable man becomes a mirror. People look into you and see themselves, their fears, their insecurities, their desire for validation. And then they start to bend, not because you forced them to, but because you never needed them in the first place. That's your advantage. You don't manipulate through pressure. You manipulate through silence. And silence, used correctly, is the loudest threat in the room. Power doesn't exist in what is said. Power exists in who defines what is being talked about. The weak answer questions. The strong define the question itself. That's called framing, and it's how control begins. Every conversation is a battle for control of the frame. And if you don't define it, someone else will. Let me show you how this works. You walk into a meeting. Your boss says, "Why did you miss the deadline?" If you answer that question, you've already lost. Because the frame is guilt. The assumption is that you failed, that you must defend. But if you shift the frame, everything changes. You don't answer, you pause, you change your posture, and then you say, "I made a call based on quality, not speed." Now the frame isn't your mistake, it's your judgment. You've reframed the entire interaction from defense to leadership. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "A wise prince must learn how not to be good, and use that knowledge when necessary. Not to be good, but to be effective. Let others chase truth. You chase control of perception." Framing is the silent battlefield behind all power dynamics in meetings, in relationships, in negotiation. And most men are blind to it. They argue inside the wrong question. They defend positions that were never theirs. They accept premises that were designed to weaken them. You think this doesn't happen to you. It does every time you try to explain yourself. Every time you start with "what I meant was," every time you respond to an insult instead of letting it rot in silence. They win because they chose the battlefield. Machiavelli's true genius lies in this. He never believed in winning debates. He believed in making debate itself unnecessary by setting the narrative first. He understood, it's not what's true that matters. It's what becomes accepted as true. That's the realm of power. Let's look at politics, or media, or business. The most successful operators never fight facts. They set frames. They don't say "I'm innocent." They say, "This is a distraction from the real issue." They don't say I'm sorry. They say this situation shows how committed I am. It's not denial, it's redirection. Because once you control the lens, you control what people see. And once you control what they see, you control how they feel. This is how you break your opponent before the fight starts. Not by beating him, but by making him justify himself. The man who is explaining is losing always, so stop explaining. Instead, impose your frame. Let's take this to relationships. Imagine a woman says to you, "Why don't you text me more? Do you not care?" If you respond emotionally, you've entered the trap. If you defend, you reinforce her frame. But if you reply, "I don't chase. I value presence." Now she must reassess you. You've shifted the burden from your behavior to her expectations. You've placed the emotional weight back where it belongs. This isn't cruelty, this is control. And every high-value man needs it, because the world will constantly bait you to react, explain, chase. But once you define the frame, you become the center of gravity. People lean toward your reality. They adjust their tone. They revise their assumptions. And here's the secret most manipulators use. The stronger your frame, the less you have to defend it. It becomes truth by repetition, by presence, by stillness. That's why silence is powerful. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's pressure. It forces others to reveal their hand. It makes them fill the space with their own fear. And that fear becomes your tool. Let's talk about another battlefield failure. Most people collapse under the frame of failure. They lose money, status, support, and start explaining. They tell long stories. They justify. They seek sympathy. But the strategic man reframes it before anyone else does. He doesn't say, "I failed." He says, "I tested, I gathered intel, I sharpened my blade." Now the loss becomes design. The setback becomes authority, because no one can use it against him if he owns it first. The moment you realize this, everything changes. You stop reacting. You start rewriting. Every insult becomes a test of your silence. Every challenge becomes a test of your pacing. Every failure becomes a stage not for apology, but redefinition. Machiavelli would tell you, you must learn to act as if everything is deliberate. Not because it is, but because control is not about reality. It's about perception. Here's how to train this skill. Identify the frame. Whenever you're challenged, ask what assumption is being made. Pause before speaking. A 2-second pause adds weight to your response and signals control. Reject emotional bait. The moment you sense emotional manipulation, return to stillness. Reframe with brevity. Long explanations lose power. Reframes should be under 10 words. "I don't rush decisions. That's not a priority right now. I trust my judgment." Repeat your frame until it becomes the truth. People don't remember accuracy. They remember authority. This is how legends are built. Not by shouting the loudest, but by making others see through your lens. And when the world sees through your lens, your reality becomes the reality. That's not arrogance. That's Machiavellian precision. You've stopped reacting. You've stopped defending. You've started framing. And now, the game bends around you. You don't defeat a strong man by challenging his strength. You defeat him by shifting the weight to where he's weakest: his emotions, his ego, his self-image. Because no matter how powerful someone seems, every man has one silent vulnerability: the fear of appearing weak. And that's what you exploit. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. He wrote, "A prince must learn to subvert the strength of others with tactics, not with force." You don't overpower, you destabilize. You don't attack, you distort. You don't confront, you mirror. Let's break this. When you want to beat someone stronger, you do not resist their force, you redirect it. Just like in judo, the goal is not to stop the opponent's energy. It's to let it flow, and then subtly twist it until they collapse under their own momentum. That's psychological warfare. Most men attack head-on. They argue, they raise their voice, they escalate. But a real strategist lets the other man burn himself out emotionally, verbally, mentally, while maintaining stillness. And then, you insert the knife where he wasn't guarding. Here's an example. Imagine someone in your team constantly competes with you, tries to dominate meetings, disrespects your input. What do most men do? Confront him, argue, complain to authority. That's predictable. That's emotional. You give him space to speak. You appear non-threatening. You even nod occasionally. And then at the right moment, you ask him a precise question in front of everyone. A question that subtly reveals he didn't understand the full context. That exposes a flaw in his thinking that forces him to stammer, correct, or overreact. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't insult. You just let his own momentum betray him. And now he looks unstable, and you look precise. This is how you break the strong, not with force, with precision strikes in moments of emotional tension. Because strong men are rarely used to being questioned calmly. They expect either submission or aggression, but calm confrontation that unnerves them. Because now they can't frame you as angry or emotional. You're not reacting, you're analyzing, and that makes you dangerous. Let's go deeper. What do powerful men fear most? Exposure? Not of crimes, but of contradictions. They fear the one thing they try to hide, that their image is a performance. So you don't call them a liar. You don't accuse them. You don't even challenge directly. You ask questions, neutral tone, no emotion, just enough curiosity. Interesting point. Who did you say verified that report again? Just to clarify, when did that decision actually get approved? You force them to re-express their logic in public. And when the logic breaks, so does the image. You don't need to attack. You let their mask crumble under its own weight. Now let's look at social dominance. Let's say someone is constantly the alpha in your group, loud, aggressive, commanding. Everyone watches him. But here's the secret. The more dominant someone appears, the more they're performing. And performers rely on the audience. So what do? Withdraw the reaction. Don't laugh. Don't compliment. Don't push back. You give him a cold nod, maybe a blank stare. And most importantly, you don't respond emotionally. Now the crowd notices you're the only one not hypnotized. And that creates tension, because the performer needs full submission. And you, with your indifference, just introduced a crack in the illusion. Eventually, others start copying your posture. And the alpha feels it. He becomes louder, trying to recover control. But the louder he gets, the weaker he appears. You've broken him without speaking. This is what Machiavelli meant by acting as necessity demands. You don't attack power directly, you expose the weaknesses it hides. Here's another method: confuse the pattern. People rely on behavioral loops. They build power by controlling rhythm, so interrupt it subtly. If someone always greets you loudly, respond coldly one day. If someone always expects praise, ignore them. If someone uses insults to bait you, respond with a smile. These small shifts destabilize control freaks. Why? Because dominance is built on predictability, on your submission to their rhythm. Break the rhythm, and you break the man. Even better, do it without emotion. Not out of anger, but out of strategy. Now you've taken his favorite weapon, reaction, and rendered it useless. That's how you become unbreakable. By staying outside the emotional field. By studying your opponent's rhythm like a machine. By waiting, observing, and applying psychological pressure at the right angle. Not always, not constantly, but precisely, surgically. Because when you do it right, one well-placed question can do more damage than 100 confrontations. One well-timed silence can unseat an entire hierarchy. One indifferent stare can create paranoia in the mind of a king. And when that paranoia sets in, you've already won. Because now, he starts adjusting to you. He watches what he says. He scans your reactions. He second-guesses himself. And the moment your opponent starts doing that, he's no longer playing his game. He's playing yours. You've stopped chasing. You've stopped reacting. You've learned to control the frame, destabilize the strong, and weaponize silence. Now comes the final transformation. You vanish from the battlefield. Because the most powerful man in the room is the one no one can reach. You're not interested in applause. You're not hungry for recognition. You don't need to win the argument, claim the spotlight, or own the narrative. You've learned what Machiavelli hinted at but never said out loud. True dominance is not about defeating your enemies. It's about making sure they can't even find you. This is what it means to be untouchable. You rise above the emotional noise. You stop defending your intentions. You erase the need to prove your value. Because you've already learned, anytime you seek validation, you hand over leverage. You give them a pressure point, a weakness, a handle. The moment you want to be liked, you're vulnerable. The moment you want to be understood, you're predictable. The moment you want to be seen for who you really are, you've already lost control. So you stop. You drop out of the race, not in defeat, but in design. You start moving differently. You speak when you choose, not when asked. You attend when necessary, not when invited. You approve on your schedule, not theirs. You create a detached gravity that pulls people in while keeping them at distance. Because power isn't about proximity, it's about mystery. And the man who masters mystery becomes a ghost that rules the living. Here's how it looks in practice. Your name comes up in a conversation, you're not there to defend it. But your absence carries weight. No one wants to speak carelessly because they don't know what you know. They don't know how close you are. They don't know what you've planned. That uncertainty. It silences men more effectively than fear ever could. This is the Machiavellian endgame. You don't just win, you disappear. Let others fight over the throne. Let them scream, posture, and bleed for scraps. You've already moved on. Because the goal was never domination. The goal was freedom. Freedom from needing them. Freedom from being seen. Freedom from the emotional hooks they use to manipulate the weak. This is where most men fail. They get a taste of control and they want more. They become addicted to power. They keep speaking. They keep fighting. They keep appearing. And that's how they collapse. Because power used too often becomes expected, and what's expected can be countered. So you withdraw. You become rare, and in your rarity, your value multiplies. You don't explain where you've gone. You don't justify your silence. You don't return calls just to be polite. You master one final weapon: strategic absence. It's not coldness, it's purity of control. Because the moment you're too available, they stop fearing you. So you vanish, and when you reappear, it's deliberate, like thunder after silence. You don't enter a room to be noticed, you enter it because it's already been prepared. You don't join conversations, you shift the atmosphere when you speak. And when you leave, they feel it. They don't know why, but something changes. Energy drops, tension rises, eyes shift. Because your presence is no longer just physical, it's psychological. That's what happens when you become untouchable. Now look around you. You'll see men still playing the old game, still chasing approval, still reacting to every post, every comment, every look. They haven't learned the truth. That power is not given, it's not taken, it's cultivated in silence, forged in distance, revealed in moments of precision. And when mastered, it does not make you popular. It does not make you loved. It makes you respected in silence, feared without threat, followed without needing to lead. That's the final form of dominance. You've stopped trying to be understood. You've become the thing they whisper about. Let them guess your motives. Let them study your silences. Let them attempt to decode your absence. You owe them nothing. You move like wind through steel, unseen, precise, untouchable. Because now you understand. You don't win by being louder. You don't win by being kinder. You don't win by being smarter. You win by being less available, less emotional, less predictable. And in doing so, you become something they can't name, can't predict, and can never destroy. You've stopped needing them. That is the moment you become powerful. That is the moment you become free. That is the moment you become Machiavellian.